Namami buddhaṃ gunasāgaraṇtaṃ sattā sadā hontu sukhiyaverā kāyo jiguncho sakalo dugandho gaccanti sabbe maranaṃ ahañca Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Homage to the Exalted One, the Worthy One, the Supremely Enlightened One. Dukkhang dukkha samuppadang dukkhaṃ saca atikkamam ariyaṃ cattangikaṃ maggaṃ dukkhopasamagāminaṃ Etaṃ ko saranaṃ kemaṃ etaṃ saranamuttamam etaṃ saranamāgamma sambha dukkha pamuccati. The most venerable Mahasangha, nuns, friends in the Dhamma. Today we are going to discuss one of the main topics in Buddhism, the Four Noble Truths. This is the heart of Buddhism. This topic is the heart of Buddhism. That is very important. All the doctrines that the Blessed One explained for 45 years can be summarized into this very same topic. Chatu Arya Satya or Chattari Arya Satya, the Four Noble Truths. Buddha says, we have been coming for a long time from birth to birth in this samsaric circle because of unknowing of the Four Noble Truths. Therefore, we have to know this topic very well. Not only surface level, but deeply we should understand this topic. Sometimes when we ask someone, mostly they say that I know these Four Noble Truths. It is very easy. Dukkha, Samudaya, Nirodha, Magga. But when we refer some discourses, this is the very rare and difficult to understand. Especially when we refer some discourses which come in such a Samyutta, it is clear that Buddha emphasizes the importance of understanding this very special topic. There is a discourse there, Andhakara Sutta. There are some dark places in this universe. We say it Antariksha Aga, such as black holes. There are some planets in this universe. They have no sunlight or moonlight. Completely, those planets are dark. One day, Buddha says, Bhikkhu, there are some dark places in this universe. There are some beings. They are born in darkness. They live in darkness. They die in darkness. That is the worst darkness in this universe. Then some monks ask that, Bhante, if there any other place that more dark place in this universe? Buddha says, yes. If a person doesn't know the Four Noble Truth, that is the most darkness situation in this world. In this situation, knowing Four Noble Truth is very, very important. When we go to learn this topic, we can see several references. Firstly, we meet this discourse in Dhammacakka Sutta, especially Mahavagga Pali. We can see this topic. Buddha first time, immediately he attained enlightenment. After a few weeks, starting delivering Dhamma to the world, the Blessed One firstly delivered this sermon to the Panchavaggiya Bhikkhu. Chattari Arya Satchani, the Four Noble Truths. After that, we can see many places this topic, especially Satya Sangyutta in Sangyutta Nikaya, Satya Katha in Patisamvida Magga, Satya Vibhanga in Vibhanga Pakarana, Satya Yamaka in Yamaka Pakarana, Abhidhamma Pali, Abhidhamma Pitaka. In several places we can see this same topic. Sometimes Buddha has explained this topic in various ways according to audience. If you are qualified in this topic, it means we are qualified in the Dhamma. It means we can go forward directly on the path of liberation with the understanding of the Four Noble Truths. And this topic, if we understand the Four Noble Truths, it means we understand the five aggregates. If we understand the five aggregates, we understand the dependent origination. If we understand the dependent origination, we understand the Dhamma. Yo patisampadam passati, so Dhamma passati. If we understand the Dhamma, it means we recognize who the Buddha is. Yo Dhammam passati, so mam passati. Understanding the triple gem, the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, completely depends on understanding this topic, the Four Noble Truths. Firstly, we can discuss this topic in the surface level. Buddha explains this topic to Panchavaggiya Bhikkhu, the five ascetic people, five ascetics who were in the Megadaya in Varanasi. There Buddha says, Kataman chauso dukkhang arya satchang. There Buddha says, Jatipi dukkha, jarapi dukkha, vyadipi dukkho, maranampi dukkhang, so on. Birth is suffering, decay is suffering, death is suffering, so on. Finally, Buddha explains, Sankittena panchupadana khanda dukkha. In short, arising of five aggregates is suffering. And then Buddha explains what the samudaya satya is. Kataman chauso dukkhang arya satchang. Yayantanha pono bhavika nandiraga sagata tatra tatra binandini, so on. Buddha says the attachment or craving is the samudaya or samudaya satya. Then Buddha explains the nirodha satya. Yotassa asesa viraga nirodha tanha. That is the cessation of suffering. The complete cessation of craving is the cessation of suffering. And the path, ayameva ariyo attangiko maggo, the noble eightfold path is the path that leads to getting rid of suffering. This is the very common explanation that we can see in the Four Noble Truths in Buddhism. And when we go forward little by little, actually, as I mentioned earlier, when Buddha did his renunciation, he had understood jati, jara and marana, birth, decay, sickness, death. This normal suffering had been understood by the Bodhisattva before he left his palace. After he attained enlightenment, He says, I realized something that I had never heard. I realized a very special thing that I never heard. Then we should understand there is another thing that Buddha had realized when he attained enlightenment. That is not just Jati, Jara, Vyadi, Marana. Because he had realized these things before he gave up his palace and other things. And in this situation, when we refer some references in Buddhism about the Four Noble Truths, we have a very special reference in Dhammacakka in Satyamaka. There we can see Dukkha and Dukkha Satya, Samudaya and Samudaya Satya, Nirodha and Nirodha Satya, Magga and Magga Satya. Nirodha means, Dukkha means any kind of sufferings that we have in our day-to-day life, such as decay, sickness, death, separation of our beloveds, so on. Those are the primary level sufferings. Anyone can understand these sufferings in this life. We don't need a Buddha or a monk or a Kalyanamitra to understand these things. It is very easy to understand. And Buddha here says, Buddha explains another thing that Dukkha Ahari Satya, the noble truth of suffering, and also Samudaya and Samudaya Satya. Samudaya means any origin, any reason. That is Samudaya. When we see something, mostly we find the origin of suffering is in outside. But Buddhism says the Samudaya Satya is not in outside. It is inside. Nandi Raga. Nandi Raga means the attachment to our five aggregates of our inner life. Samudaya can be seen anyone in the outside material world. When we have children, when we have some properties, we have a lot of problems in our day-to-day life. It can be seen anyone in the outside material world. It is Samudaya. But Samudaya Satya is inside. If Buddha explained the Samudaya Satya as which is in outside, we can say only one reason, which is attachment or craving. But we have to say another thing, which is anger too. But Buddha has explained only one reason for the attachment or as the origin of suffering. The nearest reason of suffering is that craving to our five aggregates, our inner life. Samudaya Satya is inside. Samudaya can be seen outside. Samudaya is visible. Samudaya Satya is invisible. We have attachment and anger because of this craving to our inner life, the five aggregates, Nam and Rupa. And also Nirodha and Nirodha Satya. Nirodha means the cessation of outside material world. Nirodha Satya is inside, the cessation of our five aggregates. And Magga and Magga Satya, there are several ways or paths that we can see in the outside world. But the Magga Satya depends on our understanding. It depends on, without going to extremes, with the middle path, we meet the path, especially the Noble Eightfold path. Here we should understand the Majjhima Patipada, the middle path. According to Kachana Gotta Sutta, Buddha says if a person sees the arising of five aggregates, he doesn't go to the extreme of nihilism or Uchedavada. If a person sees the cessation of five aggregates, he doesn't go to the extreme of eternalism or Sasatavada. Ucheda and Sasata, nihilism and eternalism should be overcome through one vision, which is the Paticca or the dependent origination. Iti imasmin sati idang hoti, imasmin asati idang hoti. When this is, when this is not, this is not. When some reasons arise, the results arise. When reason cease, the results also cease immediately. This is the foundation of path. Now we are going to discuss again the Four Noble Truths, Dukkha and Dukkha Satya. Actually, this is the place where we should show our skillfulness, our wisdom. This is a very sensitive place that our spiritual life completely turns on to the correct way. Until we understand this reality completely, actually be sure we don't know whether a Buddha appears in this world. Buddha is alive in our spiritual world when we understand the difference of these two things, Dukkha and Dukkha Satya. There we can see the explanation in Pali. Kāyikan dukkhaṃ, cetasika dukkhaṃ tapetva avasesaṃ dukkha satyam na dukkhaṃ. If there are anything besides physical suffering and mental suffering, that is the noble truth of suffering, that is not suffering. Again Buddha says, Kāyikan dukkhaṃ, cetasika dukkhaṃ, dukkhaṃ dukkha satyam. As Dhammacakka Sutta explains. What is that? Kāyikan dukkhaṃ, cetasika dukkhaṃ, dukkhaṃ dukkha satyam. Physical suffering and mental suffering are suffering and the noble truth of suffering as well. If we have some kind of sufferings in our day-to-day life, such as birth, decay, sickness, death, this is suffering. That is not only suffering, but that is the noble truth of suffering. Why is that? That normal suffering arises based on the noble truth of suffering. It means the very first experience that we receive through our senses, through our experiences. When we see something, when we hear something, when we smell something, when we taste something, when we touch something, here in the very first experience, the five aggregates arise. Those five aggregates are just Panchakhanda, not Panchupadana Khanda or Sakkaya. The very first experience is neither wholesome nor unwholesome. That is neither pleasant nor painful. That is neutral. The very first experience is neither suffering nor happy. The very first experience is neutral. It is just a result of our previous karma. Previous karma means not only the past life's karma, but even immediately previous karma. And all the sufferings are suffering and the noble truth of suffering as well. What is the reason? The reason is that in our day-to-day life, all the suffering based on the very first experience. What we see or hear through our senses at the present moment. The interesting thing is here that when we experience something in the first level, in the karma vipaka level, we are unable to something completely. We have only primary level understanding. Just color, sound, smell, so on. When we recognize the very first experience, we recognize everything through our mind consciousness. When we recognize something through our eyes, the very first experience, eye form, eye consciousness, eye contact, in the vipaka level, manodhatu, manovinyana dhatu, everything has ceased when we recognize something through our mind consciousness. We are unable to recognize something through eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, body consciousness. We can recognize through these 5 consciousnesses. That is why Buddhism says, Na panchahi vinyanehi kinchi dhammang pativijanati anyatra abhinipata matta. We are unable to recognize something completely through 5 consciousnesses, just contact. Just contact. Sabbe dhamma mano vinyana dhatuya vinyeya. Everything should be realized by mind consciousness. It is like we took an example last days, when we eat something, having something in a plate, when we are tasting something with something in our mouth, we always look at the plate. When we are tasting something, we think that now I am tasting food is in the plate. Is it correct? We usually think this thing, but it is not true. We never think about the food which is in our mouth. We always look at the food which is in the plate when we taste something in our mouth. When we drive somewhere, we always look at front, but we are in the past experience on the 4-wheel. We never look at the 4 wheels where we are on when we drive. We always look at front. We can never see the very first experience. Every moment, always, we recognize something after the first experience has ceased. This is the reality. If a person can understand this reality, as soon as we look at something, if we know that now I understand this form through my mind consciousness and the first experience has already ceased, what happens to us? Do we have attachment or anger? No. We know very well the material world that I am experiencing at the moment has already ceased. This is the place where we can see the qualities of the Dhamma, Sandittika and Akalika. With this understanding, we don't need to depend on any person. When we come to this level, we depend on our understanding. Then we go forward. And dukkha satya. All the dukkha's are dukkha and dukkha satya as well. But the noble truth of suffering, the dukkha satya is separate from the dukkha. Why is that? There are some people in the world, they have dukkha satya but they don't have dukkha. Who they are? Arhantas. Arhantas have dukkha satya, the noble truth of suffering, the very first experience they have. But they don't have suffering. Why is that? When five aggregates come to their life, they really understand now these five aggregates has what it says. They are immediately mindful and wise because they have completely eradicated ignorance of avidya at this moment. They have akuppa cheto vimutti. They have unshakable mind liberation. That is why they have the noble truth of suffering, the first experience, but they don't have suffering when they attain the asavakya jnana, arahanthood. They have eradicated the dukkha, but still they have the noble truth of suffering. The noble truth of suffering means it is not a feeling, physical or mental. It is just a truth. But our problem is we have no real words in any other language to translate this word suffering or dukkha. Dukkha has a very deep meaning in Buddhism. Dukkha satya is neither physical suffering nor mental suffering. If we explain this reality to the world, actually a lot of people will come to Buddhism.
Buddha and the Arahant, you means not experiencing suffering?
They don't experience suffering. They have physical pain.
But not mental pain.
No mental pain. Even though they have physical pain, they don't suffer. They don't suffer. They can say, Buddha also has said that, I am thirsty, I have pain. Buddha has said, they feel, but they tell it very mindfully that they know very well when they understand the physical suffering, they understand it not through body consciousness. They know very well when they recognize the physical suffering, they know very well they understand that suffering not through body consciousness, but they understand it through mind consciousness. Nobody, even Arantas, are unable to understand or recognize physical suffering through body consciousness. They know very well the first experience has gone already. When they recognize it, they completely recognize body pain through their mind consciousness. That is the difference. We recognize our physical suffering through our body because of ignorance. But Arantas are mindful and wise. They really understand. They recognize this suffering not through their body consciousness but through their mind consciousness. That is why they don't suffer. They have pain. But they don't take as their me, mine.
Would you refine that suffer was exactly it's a pain or something, suffer is something mixed with defilements? Or because Buddha got the problem, physical problem, he passed away because of that?
Yes, according to the conventional truth, Buddha lived in the normal world. Buddha says, if the normal people say something, I also use these words. If not, it is a big mistake. But it is very clear, especially when we refer the Charya Nanatta Jnana in Patisambhida Magga, our understanding is divided into three: Vijnanacharya, Ajnanacharya, and Jnanacharya. When we refer some teachings in there, we can understand it. Later we will discuss some other doctrines too. Okay, we have to go forward. We have several topics to discuss here. Then here, especially we should understand all the sufferings are suffering and the noble truth of suffering as well. But the noble truth of suffering is just the noble truth of suffering. Such as all the cars or buses are cars or buses and vehicle as well. Every car is a car and a vehicle as well. But all vehicles are not cars. There are some vehicles which are not cars. Like that. All the sufferings such as decay, death, sickness, they are suffering and the noble truth of suffering as well, because they based on the very first experience, the noble truth of suffering. The very special thing is here we should understand, Buddha never advised us to overcome the noble truth of suffering. Dukkha satyam parinyayam. The noble truth of suffering should be understood, should be realized. We can't overcome the noble truth of suffering. Even Arahants are unable to overcome the noble truth of suffering. In Buddha's time, we can see some ascetics, they explained, they advised their followers to overcome the noble truth of suffering. Why did they do? How did they do? They advised their followers such as Parasarya, when we refer Indriya Bhavana Sutta in Majjhima Nikaya. Parasarya advises his follower Uttariya as the path of liberation. Don't see forms, don't hear sounds. Close your eyes, close your ears. That is the path that he explains his path. Does Buddhism accept it? No, Buddhism doesn't accept it. Buddha never says us to close our eyes or ears, but we have some kind of disciplines. By practicing sila, we have some control, but it is only a temporary solution. As the first level of the path as the sila. But when we go to the deeper level, Buddha never advises us to overcome the very first experience. We receive these forms, sounds and other things as the result of sometimes our previous good karma. The very first experience is not wholesome or unwholesome. That is neutral. That is just a result. And we are discussing that suffering and the noble truth of suffering. And next we are going to Samudaya and Samudaya Satya. Samudaya means the origin, of course. Samudaya Satya is the noble truth of the origin of suffering. Samudaya and Samudaya Satya. Here we can say its explanation. Samudaya Satyam tapetva avaseso samudayo na Samudaya Satyam. Besides Samudaya Satya, other things are Samudaya, not Samudaya Satya. And it says again, Samudaya Satyam Samudayo cheva Samudaya Satyamcha. Samudaya Satya is Samudaya and Samudaya Satya as well. Samudaya is here. Samudaya Satya is here. Samudaya Satya, Samudaya and Samudaya Satya as well. Samudaya, just Samudaya. It means, according to Buddhism, Samudaya Satya is inside, which is Nandiraga, craving or attachment to our five aggregates. Because of this Samudaya Satya, we have attachment or anger with the things which is in outside. But some people, they think that the Samudaya Satya is outside. That is why, such as Nigantanatha Putta, they thought that their liberation depends on outside. That is why they gave up everything. They gave up their properties, children, relatives, even they rejected their clothes. They thought that the cause of suffering is outside. They removed everything. If the cause of suffering is in outside, it is very easy to attain enlightenment. In one day, we can completely eradicate all the sufferings. How do we do it? We can offer everything to others and we can jump into a place where in a zoo who are some animals like lions, we can dedicate everything in one day. It is very easy to liberate. But according to Buddha's message, Samudaya is outside. Samudaya is Samudaya. But Samudaya Satya inside, it is Samudaya Satya and Samudaya as well. When we destroy Samudaya inside, Samudaya Satya, other Samudayas are also destroyed immediately. Having a lot of things in the world, if we destroy this craving, the attachment to five aggregates inside, immediately we have destroyed all the cravings in outside too. But at the beginning, on the path, we can do some kind of renunciations. It is easy to come to this path, but such as King Suddhodana, while he was ruling the country as a king, he could attain enlightenment. He didn't give up anything. While he was ruling the country, he could attain enlightenment. He didn't give up Samudaya. Samudaya is outside. But he could eradicate his craving completely. That is why he could attain enlightenment as a king. Such as, this is the nature of Samudaya and Samudaya Satya. Samudaya Satya is inside. Samudaya is outside the material world. Even though we destroy Samudaya, still we have attachment here. Still we are in the samsaric circle because of avidya. Until we eradicate avidya or delusion completely, we are in the samsara. If we want to overcome craving is the nearest reason of suffering, but when we are going to eradicate craving, we have to go to the very first reason, which is ignorance of avidya. This is the difference between Samudaya and Samudaya Satya. Next, Nirodha and Nirodha Satya. Nirodha means any Nirodha. Nirodha means cessation. Cessation from going to hell, cessation from going to heavenly path. That is the cessation. But cessation the noble truth of suffering of cessation is the complete cessation from our craving. When we cease the entire craving about our five aggregates, it means we cease from all the things in the material world. As soon as we cease, we reduce our ignorance completely. We have eradicated all the cause of sufferings in the outside. Even though we have some cessation in the outside world, even though we give up our relatives, properties, our children, our clothes, still we have the origin of suffering. If we want to overcome suffering, we have to eradicate craving completely. Yo tassayeva asesa viraga nirodha. Ragakkayo, dosakkayo, mohakkayo. The complete cessation of lust or craving, anger and ill will, delusion or ignorance. This is the noble truth of the cessation of suffering. And then Magga and Magga Satya. Magga and Magga Satya. Magga Satyam tapetva avaseso maggo na Magga Satyam. Magga Satyam maggo cheva Magga Satyamcha. Besides all other maggas, that is the noble truth of the path that leads to getting rid of suffering. Besides other maggas, Magga Satya is here. And Magga Satyam maggo cheva Magga Satyamcha. Magga Satya is Magga and Magga Satya as well. It means Magga is outside, Magga Satya is here. When we practice the Noble Eightfold path, focusing on reducing our five aggregates, we have cessation here. This is the path. Even though we follow some paths outside, such as heavenly path, any other path we can see outside. Even though we follow those paths, we have no complete solution to overcome samsaric circle. But before Buddha appeared in this world, others didn't know this path. That is why they are still in the samsara. They eradicated Magga. They eradicated Apaya Magga and Kamaloka Magga. But some are still in the Arupavachara Brahmaloka. They also practice Magga. They practice heavenly path. They practice the path to Brahma realms too. But still they have their problem. Still they are in the samsaric circle. Even though they eradicated five hindrances in some levels, they didn't eradicate the main root of suffering, which is ignorance. We can reduce five hindrances in some levels, but still we are in the samsara. The reason is still we have ignorance. Until we eradicate ignorance or delusion completely, we are in the samsaric circle. But when we eradicate the samudaya satya, By practicing the Magga Satya, the noble truth of the path that leads to getting rid of suffering, the direct path, the noble eightfold path, with the understanding of the Four Noble Truths in Sammaditthi. They are Sammaditthi Purejavang. Right understanding is the forerunner. Right understanding is first. That is why when we come to the path, we should have clear understanding as Sutame Jnana, the knowledge of hearing. Without this knowing, we are unable to enter the path. That is why Buddha says very clearly, Janato aham bhikkhave passato asavanam kayam vadami no ajanato no apassato. I proclaim the liberation for those who know the path, who see the path. Before we start our spiritual journey, we should have clear understanding how suffering arises and how suffering ceases. When we see something, if our mind is fixed in the outside world, it means we are ignorance. We are in the corner of arising, samudaya anta. Now we are in the samudaya anta. Even though first experience has already ceased, still we are in that corner. In our Pruthajjana world, it hasn't ceased yet. That is why anger and craving always arise in our mind. Even though the first experience has already ceased, but through our ignorance, we have taken them, still they are happening. That is why we have defilements. If we know very well the first experience has ceased when we recognize something, we don't go to the material world finding the persons and things. For example, when we look at the sky, we can see some stars or galaxies in the sky. Sometimes they had taken time for a long time, light years to come their light to the earth. When we see some planets, actually sometimes they were not there. They are not there. They are vanished, disappeared for a long time. If we know it, when we look at a star, if we know that that star has ceased there, do we have an attachment with them? No, we can see it. We can take a picture. But we have no attachment or any defilement with that planet or star because we know very well now it is not there. That is theory. When we see something, when we hear something, when we taste something, when we smell something, this is the reality. We enjoy with anything after the first experience, especially forms have ceased. This is the vision. Vision is first. We practice this Dhamma to achieve this goal. First of all, we should have clear vision about our final goal. Without knowing, if we practice the path, our effort is not successful. Vision is very important. Vision without mission is useless. Mission without vision is blind. Therefore, when we leave your house, before you leave your house, you should know where you are going to. Without knowing the place that you are going, do you leave your house, your home? No. Before you leave your home, you really understand, you completely understand where you are going to. Imagine that place, you are leaving home and you are driving on the street, on the path. We should also be like that. When we practice Dhamma, our final goal is that going to the destination, Sunyata, Animitta, Apanihita. We are going to find in the empty village. That is the thing. When we completely understand the truth, and also if we are fully mindful and wise, as soon as we understand something through our senses, we immediately come to the reality. We don't depend on outside material world or even our inside, our mind consciousness. While we are contemplating on the outside world as anicca, we contemplate on our mind consciousness also as anicca, impermanence. Then we release from outside world and our mind as well. This is only the Suttame Jnana, the knowledge of hearing. Even though you listening to this message, we are not liberated from suffering. Now the time to start our spiritual journey. With this understanding, our inner motivation gradually increases to follow this path. Then we meet the path. What is the path? The Noble Eightfold Path. The normal people, they follow the path, finding something in outside, finding the Baloka or Swarga or heaven. They always find something outside world, following something. They want to go to heaven or near the God. But we practice this path not to go into heaven or Brahmarelam or to God. Our God is inside. Our God is wisdom. Wisdom purifies our mind. Panyaya parisuddhati. Our God, our wisdom beautifies our life. Apadana sobini panya. Panya naranang ratanang. This wisdom is the gem or jewel. Our God, our liberation, our heaven, our Brahmarelam, everything depends on our understanding, right vision, wisdom, insight. Here it is very important to understand samatha and vipassana. This is very, very, very important. Samatha and vipassana, there are two meditation techniques in Buddhism. There are two meditation techniques. The purpose of practicing samatha is that to concentrate our mind in a particular object. The purpose of practicing insight meditation or vipassana bhavana is to realize the world reality as it is. When we practice samatha meditation, we usually take some objects in the outside world. Sabbe satta bhavantu sukhitatta, may all beings be well and happy. We take some material things and sometimes we take some casino objects. There are material things. Actually, they depend on ignorance, because if we take something as material in the present moment, we take everything with our ignorance. But we practice this path with right understanding. By listening to Dhamma, we know the destination. Even though you use your car to go to your destination, your car is not your goal. It is only a tool that you use to reach your destination. Samatha Bhavana also like that. We use some Samatha meditation techniques to concentrate our mind. That is not our final goal. Even though we take some meditation object in the material world, we know very well, at this moment I have ignorance, but we use it to concentrate our mind. It depends on the conventional truth. By using these objects, we concentrate our mind. When our mind gains concentration, we reflect on the world reality as it is. Samahito bhikkhave bhikkhu yatha bhutam pajanati. He who gains concentration reflects on the reality as it is. What is that? When we concentrate our mind, our insight meditation depends on the past experience. This is very important. We usually practice vipassana bhavana taking an object which happened in the past. I is impermanent, forms are impermanent, I consciousness is impermanent. We never can get a form I consciousness in the present moment. We always take these things after they ceased. We reflect on that. My I is impermanent, forms are impermanent, I consciousness is impermanent, I contact is impermanent. Focus in our mind in the present moment. We reflect on these things as impermanence, suffering and selflessness. Anicca dukkha anatma. But always we take these things, we know very well, everything that we reflect on are already ceased. When we practice insight meditation, taking some objects which already have ceased, when we keep our mind in that object, reflecting on impermanence, eye is impermanent, nose is impermanent, our tongue is impermanent, body is impermanent, so on, then we release from the outside material world. When we reflect on these objects as impermanence, we release from outside. At the same time, immediately we insight our present moment too. What is the present experience? Present experience is that manancha paticca dhammecha uppajjati manoviññānam. Present experience means what we think at this moment. That is also should be reflected. That is said in Buddhism, tatta tatta vipassati. Just moment, at this moment we reflect on everything is impermanent. What is my life at the moment? Then, yatta patavi chāpocha tejo vayo nagadati. Our mind doesn't touch anything in outside material world or even inside. We release from both outside material world and our inside mind consciousness. This is the nature of the qualities of the Dhamma Sandittika Kalika. If we listening to this message and if we understand this message, automatically our inner motivation, inner courage increases. It means virya. We should be confident, saddha in this reality, what the Blessed One explained. The more we have confidence, the more we have inner courage, inner motivation to go forward on this path. When then we meet the path, the only path. What is that? Sati. Ekayano ayam bhikkhave maggo. Practicing mindfulness is the only path for the liberation. Saddha, Virya, then Sati. As the result of practicing Sati or mindfulness, we are able to attain concentration. We are able to gain concentration. That is Samadhi. When mind gains concentration, with concentrated mind, we reflect on the world as it is, as anicca, dukkha, and anatta. This is the very short introduction to the Four Noble Truths. I think you have a lot of questions. If you don't have questions, it means you didn't listen to this. If you perfectly listening to this session, this lecture, you may have many questions. It is good. It means you have to search a lot of things.
Yes. Bhante, can you explain a little bit in Sinhala that dukkha and dukkharya such a Sinhala?
Yes.
These people will be patient for that.
Yes, actually,
Come back.
දුක ඇත්තෙන්ම දුක සහ දුක සත්‍යය. ඕකනේ සිංහල තේරුම. ඒ කියන්නේ දැන් කෙනෙක් මහලු වෙන එක, ලෙඩ වෙන එක, මැරෙන එක ඒක දුක. ඒ දුක බුදුහාඳුරු ගිහිගින් නික්මෙන කලින්ම දැනගත්තා. ඒක ගිහිගින් නික්මෙන කලින් දැනගත්තු බුදුහාඳුරුව තමයි බුදු වෙලා දේශනා කළේ පුබ්බේ අනුනුසුතේසු ධම්මේසු කියලා. එහෙනම් මේකමද තේරුම් ගත්තේ බුදුහාඳුරුව? මේකම වෙන්න බෑනේ. මේකත් එක්ක තවත් මීට වඩා ගැඹුරු දෙයක් තේරුම් ගත්ත සියුම් දෙයක්. අන්නේ සියුම් දේ තමයි දුක්ඛ සත්‍ය කියලා කියන්නේ. හැබැයි මේ සිදුවන මහලු වීම, ලෙඩ වීම, මරණ කියන ටික ඒ දුක ඒක දුක්ඛ සත්‍යෙන් බැහැර දෙයක්වත් නෙවෙයි. අපි කියවනේ හැම කාර් එකක්ම කාර්යයකුත් වෙනවා, වාහනයකුත් වෙනවා. හැම දුකක්ම දුකකුත් වෙනවා, දුක්ඛ සත්‍යයක් වෙනවා. ඒ නිසා තමයි ධම්මචක්ක සූත්‍රයේ කතමංචාවසෝ දුක්ඛං අරිය සත්‍යං කියලා කියනකොට ජාතිපි දුක්ඛයෙන් පටන් ගත්තේ. ඇයි ඒක? ඒක දුකයි දුක්ඛ සත්‍ය දෙක මේක. විශේෂයෙන් බුදුරජාණන් වහන්සේ කාලේ මුල් කාලේ කරපු දේශනාවලදී පංචවග්ගීය බික්කුන්, සරුවත් හාමුදුරුවෝ, මුගලන් හාමුදුරුවෝ, බාහ්‍ය දාරුචීරිය මේ ප්‍රධාන අය ඔක්කොම ගිෆ්ටඩ් අය, සුබග අය. එයාට මේක කෙටියෙන් කියනකොට සසර පුරුද්දත් එක්ක ඊටු ටිකක් තේරුම් ගත්තා. විතරක් නෙවෙයි දැනට තියෙන ඩිස්කෝසස් වල බොහෝ කාරණා ගිලිහිලා තියෙන ඇත්තෙම අපිට. ඒකේ සමරි විතරේ තියෙන ඇත්තෙම. දිගට ගෙනිය.
මේක අවධාරණය කර කියන්නේ දුකයි and දුකාරිය සත්‍යයි ඒ දෙක අතර වෙනස මොකක්ද? දෙකම එකයිනේ.
දෙකම එක වෙන අවස්ථාවකුත් තියෙනවා. හරි ඒක. ඔබන්සේ හරි. දැන් අපි කියුනේ ලැබවීම මහලුවීම කියන එක දුකකුත් වෙනවා. ඒක දුක සත්‍යයක් වෙනවා. හැබැයි
ඒකම තමයි සත්‍යය.
ඒකම තමයි සත්‍ය යම්කිසි මට්ටමකින්. හැබැයි එකක් තියෙනවා දුක නොවන දුක්ඛ සත්‍යයක් තියෙනවා.
ඒ මොකක්ද සායන?
අන්න ඒක තමයි අපි කිව්වේ අර කායික දුකත් චේතසික දුකත් නොවන යම්කිසි දෙයක් තියෙනවා.
ඒ මොකක්ද?
ඒක තමයි අර ෆස්ට් එක්ස්පීරියන්ස් එක. ඒ කියන්නේ අපි ඇහැට රූපයක් දකින මුල් අවස්ථාව.
ඒක තමයි ස්කන්ධ.
ඒක තමයි පංචස්කන්ධයේ මුල් ස්කෙල්ටන් එක. ඒ ස්කෙල්ටන් එකට අපේ තියෙන ලේ මස් නහර ටික දාන එක තමයි සක්කාය කියන්නේ, පංචඋපාදානස්කන්ධය කියලා කියන්නේ, දුක කියලා කියන්නේ.
එතකොට පංචස්කන්ධය දුකයි, උපාදානස්කන්ධය දුකයි.
එහෙම කියන්නේ නැහැ. රහතන් වහන්සේට පංචස්කන්ධය අසුරු කරනවා. ඒ නිසා තමයි සෝපදි ශේෂ නිර්වාණය කියලා කියන්නේ. උපදි සහිතයි. ඒ උපදි කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? උන්වහන්සේට ක්ලේශ උපදි නැහැ, අபிසංකාර උපදි නැහැ, නමුත් උන්වහන්සේට කන්ද උපදි තියෙනවා. පංචස්කන්ධය නැමැති උපදිය තියෙනවා තවදුරටත්. ඒ නිසා තමයි සෝපදි සෝපදි නිර්වාණය කියලා කියන්නේ. යම් කිසි කෙනෙක් තවදුරටත් ඒ කියන්නේ අර සමසීසී කියන්නේ රහත් වෙනකොටම පිරිනවන කෙනා ඒක නෑ හැර අනිත් කෙනාට කියන්නේ අපි සෝපදි ශේෂ නිර්වාණ ධාතුව කියලා. නිර්වාණ කොටස් දෙකයිනේ. සෝපදි අනුපදි කියලා. ඒකට සෝපදි කියලා කියන්නේ රහතන් වහන්සේ මේ ස්කන්ධ සහිතවයි. තවදුරටත් රහතන් වහන්සේ කෙනෙක් විදිහට ඉන්නේ. උන්වහන්සේට ස්කන්ධ පංචකයේ තියෙනවා.
නමුත් දුකයි ස්කන්ධ පංචකේ දුකයි.
ස්කන්ධ පංචකයේ දුකයි කියන්නේ අන්න ඒකයි වැඩේ.
දුකයි කියන්නේ
ස්කන්ධ පංචකයේ දුකයි කියන්නේ. මේක දුක්ඛ සත්‍ය.
ඒක දුක්ඛ සත්‍ය.
හැබැයි අපි කියන අද කියන දුක තුල ස්කන්ධ පංචකයක් තියෙනව නැත්තේ නෑ.
සංස්පටි සමාවෙන්නේ ඒක බුදුහාම කියලා තියෙන අර මේ ස්කන්ධ පංචක තමයි බර. ඒක ණයක්. ඒක රෝගයක්. ඒක ගෙඩියක්. වනයක්. මේ ස්කන්ධ පංචකය කියන්නේ එහෙම දැන් මේ යවකලාපි සූත්‍රය ගත්තා. දැන් ඒකෙත් කියනවා මේක සල්ලං ගණ්ඩු මේක ස්කන්ධ පංචකයම. එතකොට ඒකම තමයි දුක. ඒතකොට
ඇත්තෙම මේ බොහෝ විට දුක්ඛ සත්‍ය විස්තර කරනම් තමයි වචන ටික කියලා තියෙන්නේ. සමහර තැන්වල දුක නොකිය දුක්ඛ සත්‍ය කියපල අලුත් තියෙනවා. ඇත්තෙම ඒ තැන්වලදී අපි හරියට බොහොම සියුම විමසා ගන්න ඕන ඒ ඔඩියන්ස් එක අනුව කියලා තියෙනවා. දැන් නත්ති කන්දා සමා දුක්ඛ කියලා තියෙනවා. ස්කන්ධ දුක හැර වෙන දුකක් නෑ කියලා. ඇත්තෙම මෙතන මේ කන්දා කියලා කිව්වට මේ පංචස්කන්ධයම තමයි නිරුද්ධ කරන්නේ. මොකද ඊටාම පැහැදිලි රහතන් වහන්සේලා ගැන විස්තර කරනකොට රහතන් වහන්සේ දුක නිමාටපත් කරනවා. ආසාවකයන් යන්නේ ලබද්දී දුක නිමාටපත් කරනවා. ස්කන්ධ පංචකය කියන්නේ පංච උපාදාන ස්කන්ධ සංඛ්‍යාත දුක නිරුද්ධ කරනවා. නමුත් අර ඉපදෙච්ච ඒ කියන්නේ పూర్ව කර්ම දායාදයක් විදිහට ලැබපු ස්කන්ධ ටික තවදුරටත් පරිහරණය කරනවා. එතකොට ඒකට අදාළ ලෙඩවීම මහලවීම ටික සම්මුති ලෝකයන්ෝ ඒ දුක් ටික එනවා නැත්තේ නෑ. හැබැයි සම්මුති ලෝකයේ කෙනා අනේ මේ රහතන් වහන්සේ ලෙඩ වුණා, මහලුණා, මැරුණා කියලා කිව්වට ඒ මට්ටමින් ඒ දුක රහතන් වහන්සේගේ ලෝකෙට එන්නේ නෑ. රහතන් වහන්සේ ඒ දුක ඒ විදිහට ස්පර්ශ කරන්නේ නෑ.
නමුත් උන්වහන්සේලා අර ගිහි සාමාන්‍ය පුත්තජන මනුස්සයෙක් විඳින්න නැති විදිහට විඳින විදිහට ඒ දුක විඳින්නේ නැහැ. රහතුන් වහන්සේ කෙනෙක් විදිහට ඒ දුක විඳිනවා. දැන් අගිරිමානන්ද රහතුන් වහන්සේට බුදුහාමුදුරන් ආනන්ද හාමුදුරුවෝ උදාසඤ්ඤාව කිව්වේ ලෙඩ වෙලා ඉඳලා. කාශ්‍යප හාමුදුරන්ට සත්බොජ්ජංග කිව්වෙත් ලෙඩ වෙලා ඉඳලා රහතුන් වහන්සේලම හැටියට වෙලා ඉඳලා. බුදුහාමුදුරන් තමන්ටම සූත්‍රය කියාගත්ත චුල්ල මේ චුන්ද බොජ්ජංග සූත්‍රය.
ඒ දුක් වේදනාව නෙවෙයි.
දුකම තමයි කායික දුක තියෙනවා.
වේදනාව තියෙනවා.
කායික වේදනා තියෙනවා.
වේදනාව තියෙන නමුත් අර ඒකට ප්‍රතිචාර දක්වන පෘථග්ජනය ප්‍රතිචාර දක්වන තියෙන මේක වෙනස්.
ඔකල මේ සල්ල සූත්‍රය ලස්සනට කියනවනේ හදන්නේ.
ඊතල දෙකෙන් එකක් වළක්වනවා පළවෙනි එක වළක්වන්න බෑ.
ඊතල යනගන්නේ.
ඒ ස්කන්ධ ධර්ම.
ඒ කියන්නේ පළවෙනි උල අනිත්
ඒක වළක්වන්න බෑ අපට. ඒක එනවා. නමුත් අර දෙවෙනි උලෙන් ඒ කියන්නේ මනෝ සම්පස්යෙන් ඇති වෙන දුක් ටික නිදහස් වීම වෙන්නේ. කායික දුක අපිට කියන්න පුළුවන්. කායික දුක තියෙන බුදුරජාණන් වහන්සේට මට පිපාසයි, මට වේදනයි, මට කොන්දේ අමාරුයි ඒව කියලා තියෙනවා. ඒ විතරක් නෙවෙයි ඒ පැත්තට මනස යන එක ඒ ටිකත් යටපත් කරන්න තමයි ඒක අතකින් පිරිත් කියන්නේ. අනිත් අතින් සමත භාවනාවක් වඩන්නේ. අනිත් අතින් ධානසුවේ ඉන්නේ. අනිත් පැත්තෙන් නිරෝධ සමාපත්තිය පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ. මෙන්න මේ ඊටු ටික යටපත් කරගන්න පිරුවන් පානකම්.
Thank you, Bhavana. It's very clear now. Please continue in English.
පළවෙනි අද්දකීම පළවෙනි දුක්ඛ සත්‍ය කියලා කිව්වේ දැන් පළවෙනි අද්දකීම වගේ නේ ස්කන්ධ පාග වශයෙන් ඇතන ස්කන්ධ පහ ඒක දුක්ඛ සත්‍ය නම් එතන දුක්ඛ කියන්නේ මොන අර්ථයෙන්ද?
දුක්ඛ කියන්නේ ඒක විඳින අර්ථයෙන් නෙවෙයි ඇත්තෙන්ම. ඒක රියැලිටි එකක් විදියට. ඒ දුක්ඛ කියන වචනය පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ යම්කිසි සත්‍යයක් පාවිච්චි කිරීමේ වචනයක් විදියට.
යදනිච්ඡන් තන් දුක්ඛ.
හැබැයි එතෙන්දී අපි හඳුනන ඒ අවස්ථාව ගැන කිව්වනේ ඒක ප්‍රසන් නේද ප්‍රසන් නොවන් ප්‍රසන්
අනයම කිව්වා නියුට්‍රල් කියලා අභ්‍යගත කිව්වනේ. ඔය එතන දුක්ඛ වෙන්නේ.
නෑ දුක කියන මේක හඳුරන. ඒක දුකක් කියලා කියන්නෙම සත්‍යයක් විදියට. තත අවිතත අනන්‍යත මට්ටමින් ඒක සත්‍යයක් විදියට දුක්ඛ කියන වචනේ පාවිච්චි කරනවා. දැන් උදාහරණයක් ඇටියට ඒ වගේ වචන හුඟක් තියෙන බුදුදහම තුල. දිට්ඨි කියන එක. සබ්බ දිට්ඨි පහනාය තමයි ධර්ම දේශනා කළ තියෙන්නේ. හැබැයි සම්මා දිට්ඨි කියලා එකක් තියෙනෝනේ. දිට්ඨි සම්පන්න කියලා තියෙනෝනේ. දිට්ඨිගත කියලා තියෙනෝනේ. එතකොට එතන දිට්ඨි කියලා කියන්නේ අර අයින් කරන සක්කාය දිට්ඨිය ආදී දිට්ඨි නෙවෙයි කියන්නේ. අර ප්‍රඥාවට කියන සිනොනිම් එකක් විදිහට තමයි මෙතන මේ දිට්ඨි සම්පන්න බව, දිට්ඨිගත මේ වගේ වචන පාවිච්චි කරලා තියෙන්නේ. අර සබ්බ දිට්ඨි පහන කියන සංකල්ප ඉඳලා නෙවෙයි.
දුක්ඛ කියන එක එතකොට එහෙනම්
දුක්ඛ කියන එකත් අපිට ඒ විදිහට ගන්න පුළුවන්. එතකොට දුක්ඛ සාමාන්‍ය දුක් යද්දී සාමාන්‍ය ව්‍යවහාර ලෝකයේ දුක කියලා තියෙනවා. හැබැයි දුක්ඛ සත්‍ය කියන concept එක යද්දී ඒක අර පරමාර්ථ සත්‍යයක් විදියට ඒ සත්‍යයක් ව්‍යවහාර කරන්න පාවිච්චි කරපු වචනයක්.
කියන්නේ අදිනාර මදුපිණ්ඩික සූත්‍රය කියන්නේ තින්නා සංගති පස්සෝ. එතනින් ඉවරයි. ඒක ෆස්ට් එක්ස්පීරියන්ස් එක.
ඒක දුක්ඛ සත්‍ය කියලා කියන්නේ.
ඔව් ඒක ෆස්ට් එක්ස්පීරියන්ස්.
ඒක විතරක් නෙමෙයි.
එතන ඉඳලා වේදනාවේ පැත්තට යනකොට
මේකයි සමහර සූත්‍ර දැන් මදුපිණ්ඩික සූත්‍රයේ සාකච්ඡා කරද්දී අපි හුඟක් කල්පනාකාරී වෙන්න ඕන. එකක් තමයි මදුපිණ්ඩික සූත්‍රයේ චක්කුංච පටිච්ච රූපේච ඒ චක්‍රය කියන ගමම්ම ඊළඟ එක මොකද්ද? චක්කුස්මින් අසති රූපස්මින් අසති කියලා සම්පූර්ණ මුල ඉඳන්ම නිරෝධයක් කියනවා. එතකොට මදුපිණ්ඩික සූත්‍රය විස්තර කරන විදියට මැදදි ගිහිල්ලා වේදනාව ළඟදී නැති කරන කතාවක් නෙවෙයි කියන්නේ. මදුපිණ්ඩික සූත්‍රයේ චක්කුන් එක ආරම්භ වෙන්නේම අවිද්‍යාවෙන්. චක්කුන් එකෙන් අවිද්‍යාවෙන් ආරම්භ වුණා නම් අවසන් වෙන්නේ ප්‍රපංච වලින්. ආයේ මැද ස්ටොප් සයින් නෑ මොකද. ඒ නිසා තමයි ඊළඟ දෙවෙනි විස්තරය තියෙන්නේ ඇස නැති කාලේ රූපේ නැති කාලේ කියන්නේ බලනකොටම ඇහැ තියෙන දෙයක් විදිහට නෙවෙයි ගන්නෙ. රූපය තියෙන දෙයක් විදිහට නෙවෙයි ගන්නෙ. අරක සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම නිරෝධයේ පැතින් දැන් ගන්නෙ.
මට තේරෙනවා එතන පටිච්ච සමුප්පන්නව මේ ප්‍රපංච බිහි වෙන්නේ කොහොමද කියන එක තමයි මේ වෙන්නේ කියලා. ඇහත් රූපයක් චක්කු විඥානයක් නැත්තම් ඔය හේතු ටික මේ නැත්තම් පස්සේ නැත්තම් වේදනාව නැහැ, වේදනාව නැත්තම් සංඥාව නැහැ, සංඥාව නැත්තම් ප්‍රපංච නැහැ. ඒක ආරෝහණ අවරෝහණ විදිහට එනකොට තමයි මේ සීක්වන්ස් එක තමයි එතන පැහැදිලි
ඇස තිබ්බා කියලා ප්‍රපංච ඇති වෙන්නේ නැහනේ.
නෑ. මේකයි.
තිබ්බා කියලා ප්‍රපංච ඇති වෙන්නේ රාතුන් වහන්සේට ප්‍රපංච ඇති වෙන්න ඕනේ. බුදුහාමරට ප්‍රපංච ඇති වෙන්න ඕනේ. එහෙම වෙන්නේ. ඇස තිබ්බත් සම්පස්සේ තිබ්බත් වේදනාව තිබ්බත් තණ්හාව නැත්තම් ඉන් එහාට එතන කිසි දෙයක් නැහැ.
මෙතෙන්දී අපි තේරුම් ගන්න අපේ හාමුදුරුවෝ කිව්ව එක හරියටම මදුපිණ්ඩික සූත්‍රයේ තියෙන්නේ මුලින් චක්කුංච පටිච්ච රූපේච කතාව යන්නේ අවිජ්ජා පත්‍ය සංඛාරා කියන පටිච්චසමුපාදයේ සමුදය පැත්තේ යන්නේ. එතකොට අවිජ්ජායත්වයේ වාසයස විරාග නිරෝධා සංඛාරේ නිරෝධා කියන එක තමයි චක්කුස්මින් අසති රූපස්මින් අසති අන්නේට කියන්නේ. මේ දෙක තමයි විස්තර කරන්නේ. අනිත් කාරණය තමයි ඇස කියන එක. ඇස කියන එක රහතන් වහන්සේ ඇස කියන එකයි අපි ඇස කියන එකයි වෙනස් සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම.
ඒක විස්තර කළොත්
රහතන් වහන්සේ ඇස කියලා කියන්නේ උන්වහන්සේ අවබෝධයෙන් ඇස නිරුද්ධ වෙච්ච මොහොතක ඒ අතීත ඇස විදියට නුවණින් දකිමින් ඇස කියන එක විස්තර කරනවා. අපි ඇස කියලා දකින්නේ අපි රූපය කියලා දකින්නේ මොකද්ද? අපි ඇස සහ රූපය කියලා දකින්නේ අර සමුදයන්ති ඉඳලා නිරුද්ධ වෙච්ච එක අවිද්‍යාවෙන් අරගෙන ඇති දෙයක් හැටියට අපි අරගෙන තමයි මේක මේ මොහොතේ අපි මේ සාකච්ඡාවට භාජනය කරන්නේ.
يعني විපරීත සංඥා ටිකක් පුතඥයට ඇති වෙන ප්‍රපංචකරණයත් එක්ක. දැන් හාමුදුරුවෝ පැහැදිලිව මට තේරෙන්නේ දැන් මේ සීක්වන්ස් එක මෙහෙම යනකොට ඇසත් රූපයක් චක්කු විඥානයක් චක්කු පංසයත් ඔතනින් මනෝ විඥානයේ ගාවට එනකොට අපිට තියෙන සමුදය විපරිණාමයේ නිරෝධය මේ සියල්ල ටික ඕක ඇතුලේ යන්නේ. ඒක හාමුදුරුවෝ මතක් කරා මනෝ විඥානය කියන තැනින් ඇවිල්ලා අපි ඒක කන්සෙප්චුවලයිස් කරලා මේක දෙයක් හැටියට ගන්නකොට already අර ඒකට උපකාරී වෙච්ච හේතුකාරක වෙච්ච දේවල් ටික අර විපරිණාමය ඇතුලේ ගිලිහිලා ඉවරයි. අතීතයක් බවට පත් වෙලා ඉවරයි. හැබැයි ඒක මනෝවිඤ්ඤාණයෙන් අල්ලගන්නේ දෙයක් හැටියට.
ඒක තමයි අවිද්‍යාව.
ඒක තමයි අවිද්‍යාව.
අර වචන තේරෙන්නේ නැහැ ස්වාමීනි.
එතකොට
එන්නේ පංච උපාදානස්කන්ධා දුක්ඛ කියලා ධම්මචක්ක පාඨ සූත්‍රයේ තියෙන අන්තිමට විග්‍රහය. ඒතර ඔබ කියන්නේ ඒ විග්‍රහය තුළ දුක්ඛාර සත්‍ය සම්පූර්ණ විස්තර කරලා නැද්ද?
ඒක තුල දුක්ඛාරය සත්‍ය කියන එකක් තියෙනවා. දැන් අපි සාමාන්‍ය කිව්වේ දුක කියන එක දුකකුත් වෙනවා දුක සත්‍යයක් කියනවා කියන එක. දැන් කතමංචාවසෝ දුක්ඛං අරිය සත්‍යං කියලානේ පටන් ගන්නෙ. ඒක තුල දුක්ඛාරය සත්‍යයක් තියෙනවා. හැබැයි ඒක තුලම දුකක් තියෙනවා. දුක්ඛාරය සත්‍ය බේස් කරගෙන තියෙන දුක්ඛ තමයි විස්තර කරන්නේ. දෙකම තියෙනවා. හැබැයි ඉතින් පස්වග මහණුන් කියලා කියන්නේ අපි වගේ සාමාන්‍ය නෙවෙයි. උන්වහන්සේලා සුවිශේෂයි විතරක් නේ ওই දේශනය තව හුඟා කාරණා ඔය අතරේදී විස්තර කරන්න ඇති. එතකොට අපි දැන් මේ තියෙන රෙෆරන්ස් ටික විතරක් කරන්නේ කියන්නේ මෙතන ඔහොම එකක් කියලා නෑ. එහෙම කියලානේ අපි කියන්නේ. අපිට එහෙම කියන්න බෑ ඇත්තෙම. එතකොට ඒකාතිකින් උන්වහන්සේලා ප්‍රඥාවන්තය දැන් බාහ්‍ය දාරු චීරියට දිත්තේ දිත්තමත්තන් කියනකොටම තේරුණේ ඔක්කොම ටික. එතකොට මේ සිස්ටම් එක මාඩු ගානේ පටිසම්පාද කියන වචනයක් කිව්වේ නැහැ. චතුරාර්ය සත්‍ය කියන වචනයක් කිව්වේ නැහැ. ඒව නොකිය දිත්තේ දිත්තමත්තන් කතාව කියනකොටම අර ටික ඔක්කොම වැටුණේ යාට. එතකොට පස්සගහනුත් කියන්නේ ඒ වගේ මුලින්ම රහත් වෙන පාරමිතා පුරාගෙන ඒක අපි විශ්වාස කරන විදිහට එහෙම දීර්ඝ කාලයක් කැපීම් කරපු අයනේ. එතකොට ඒ අයට මේක කියනකොටම ඇහෙනකොටම සහ තව කරුණු බුදුරජාණන් වහන්සේ දේශනා කර නැති. එතකොට එයාට තේරුණේ මේක දෙකම මේකයි කියලා. නමුත් අපට මේ හැලිච්ච ටික අපි මේ තැන්වලින් තමයි කල්යාණ මිත්‍ර ආශ්‍රයෙන් සහ අනිත් රෙෆරන්ස් ටිකත් පාවිච්චි කරලා තමයි අපි මෙතෙන්ට මේ ටික ඇප්ලයි කරගන්න ඕනේ. කෙලින් පාවිච්චි කළා. දුක්ඛං අරිය සත්‍යං කියන එක පාවිච්චි කළා.
අතට මම හිතන්නේ සූත්‍ර ක්‍රමය තමයි තාම ලේසි සහ සරල එක.
හරිම සරල ක්‍රමය.
ඔව් අභිධර්මයේදී ඇත්තටම
සූත්‍ර ක්‍රමය හරිම සරල ක්‍රමයක්. හැබැයි ඒක සරලව කියනකොටම තේරුම් ගන්න පුළුවන් බුද්ධි මට්ටමක් තියෙනවා නේද? බුද්ධිමත් මයට හොඳ මේක සූත්‍ර පිටකේ.
මම හිතා ඊට අභිධර්මයේ සමහර ටික කරලා බුද්ධිමත්ම කෙනෙක් නම් ගිෆ්ටඩ් කෙනෙක් නම් සූත්‍ර පිටකේ බාහ්‍ය සූත්‍රය ධම්මචක්ක සූත්‍රයේ විතරක් කිව්වත් ඇති. ගිෆ්ටඩ් කෙනෙක් නම්. ඉතින් අපිට එච්චර ගිෆ්ටඩ් නෑ කියලා හිතනවා නම් තව ඒව සංයුත්තනිකායේ සත්‍ය සංයුත්තේ ටිකක් බලන්න වෙනවා. විභංග සංයුත්තේ බලන්න වෙනවා. යමක අපරින් ටික ටික බලන්න වෙනවා. අපට තේරෙනවා අඩුයි කියලා හිතෙනවා. මොකද අපිට මෙතන එළියට බැහැලා යනකොටම අපි වොෂින්ටන් යන්න ඒ පැත්ත දන්න කෙනෙකුට පාරවල් දෙකක් කිව්ව ගමන් ඇති. මේ ප්‍රීව් එකේ නෝත් එකට යන්න ගිහිල්ලා මේකේ සවුත් එකට යන්න කියලා අපිට කෙලිම කියන්න පුළුවන්. හැබැයි එච්චර දන්නේ නැති කෙනෙකුට අපිට කියන්න මෙතෙන් එළියට බැහැලා මෙතන දකුණට යන්න මෙතන 7.7ක් යනකොට මෙතෙන්ට යන්න එහෙමම තවත් එයාට විස්තර කියන්න වෙනවා. එතකොට දැනුම හොඳට ඉහළට බුද්ධිය තියෙන කෙනෙකුට ඊටාම කෙටියෙන් කියනකොටම තේරෙනවා මේක. හැබැයි විශේෂයෙන්ම අපට මේකේ ගැඹුරම තැන ස්පර්ශ කරන්නයි අපේ මේක යන බලාපොරොත්තුව. ඒක ඇත්තෙන්ම දුකයි
දුක විඳා දුක එන්කවුන්ටර් කළා කියන එකේ අදහස් වෙන්නේ දුක ගැන අවබෝධයක් තිබ්බා කියලා.
අනිත් එක තමයි දුක තේරුම් ගන්න දුක් විඳිනව නැත්නම්.
ඉරණ පාන කරන
දැන් අනුරුද්ධ හාමුදුරුවෝ වගේ අය ගත්තොත් ගිහි ගෙදර එහෙම දුකක් විඳපයි කියලා කියන්න බෑ. එතකොට කායික මානසික වශයෙන් දුකක් විඳින්න ඕනේ නැහැ දුක තේරුම් ගන්න. අනේක වැදගත්කම.
දුක තේරුම් ගන්නවා කියන එකෙන් මට හිතෙන්නේ අර මතුපිට ස්වභාවයේදී දුක එක්ස්පීරියන්ස් කරන එකයි මේ දුක විඳින්නේ ඒක හැදෙන්නේ කොහොමද?
අන්නේ හැදෙන එක තමයි මේ තේරුම් ගන්න උත්සාහ කරන්නේ.
දුක්ඛ සත්‍ය කියන්නේ නේද?
දුක සත්‍ය කියන්නේ ඒකම තමයි.
දුක සත්‍ය කියන තත්ත්වයට වැටෙන්නේ එතන.
ඒ කියන්නේ සාමාන්‍ය විදියට දුක් ඕපනීයසා සද්ධා කියලා සාමාන්‍ය කෙනෙක් විස්තර කරන්නේ දුක විඳිනකොට ශ්‍රද්ධාව ඇති වෙනවා කියලා. දුක විඳිනකොට ශ්‍රද්ධාව ඇති වෙනවා නම් මේ ධමයක් ඕනේ නැහැ. මේක ඇත්තෙන්ම දුක තියෙන මේ කරුණු හතරම එකිනෙකට සම්බන්ධයි. විශේෂයෙන් ගවම්පති කියලා සූත්‍රයත් වෙන සංයුත්ත නිකායේ පැහැදිලිවම සඳහන් කරනවා එක සත්‍යයක් හරියට තේරුම් ගත්තොත් අනිත් තුනක් තේරුම් ගන්නවා. දෙකක් තේරුම් ගත්තා නම් අනිත් දෙක තේරුම් ගන්නවා. නමුත් අද අපට සාමාන්‍ය කෙනෙක් දුකක් තේරුම් ගත්තට දැන් මම ලෙඩ වෙනවා මහලු වෙනවා කියලා according to Gavampati Sutta which comes in Sanghutta Nikaya it says very clearly if a person understand one truth he is able to understand other truths too. According to what Buddha said, if we can understand one truth it helps us to understand other truths too. But we should understand it according to what the Buddha taught. That is very important. There we have to refer references in order to understand this reality. The special thing, if we really understand what the noble truth of suffering is, it helps us to develop our inner motivation. If we are ignorant, if our mind depends on outside, it means we are in suffering. We have to suffer. If we know it very well, our inner motivation gradually increases, and also we meet the path, we find the path, and we hurry to practice this path. The reason is that nobody likes to suffer. Therefore, we hurry to go forward with this motivation, with the understanding of the noble truth of suffering. Yes?
When I hear that, I have a question actually. When you say, if anyone can understand any of the truth, out of four, he or she will understand the rest.
Yes.
But is it possible to understand for someone the second or the third, fourth truth without first one?
We should understand one truth directly and perfectly. But we usually say that, we usually think that these four things are very easy. Dukkha means jati jara is dukkha. Samudaya means craving. Nirodha means cessation of craving. Magga or path means Ariyatangika Magga, Sila Samadhi Panya. In that level, we think that it is very easy, but it doesn't help us to understand other things. But when we see Jata Sutta, Sile Patittahaya Naro Sapanyo Chittang Panyancha Bhavayam, they explain only one truth, the path, Sila Samadhi Panya. But when someone listening to that truth, he can understand that is not only the complete discourse, it may be other informations too. However, if we can understand with details one truth, it helps us to understand other truths too. For example, according to this understanding, now I explained Samudaya and Samudaya Satya. Samudaya means the attachment to the outside world. And we said that that is not the real, the cessation of suffering.
But what do you mean by outside world? Samudaya arising with the attachment to the outside world. It's a bit confusing.
Yes, sometimes we may think that if I have a person who disturbs me, that is the reason of suffering. If I have a son who always disturbs me, it is the cause of suffering. We usually think. But actually that is not the real truth of the origin of suffering. I like my own life, my five aggregates. If he lives according to my point of view, I agree with him. I happy with him. If he doesn't live according to my opinion, then I hate him. But cause is here. The origin of suffering is here. I like my five aggregates. I attach to my five aggregates.
So then the suffering samudaya arise itself when we are loving our own fire aggregates.
It's not out there. It is
Yes.
itself, oneself.
If the cause of suffering were outside, we have to say two things. Not only craving, but even anger too. But there are only reason. One reason. What is that? Attachment or craving. Because of craving to the five aggregates of mind, when someone works that I like, even though he is wrong, if I like according to my opinion, it is okay for me. Because I like myself, I like my five aggregates. Therefore, when outside world is agree with me, then I also agree with them. This is the place, this is the difference that we should understand. Buddha's time, as we mentioned earlier, there were some religious people such as Nigatanatha Putta. They also had understood suffering. They thought that suffering is outside. Suffering comes from outside. Or Parasariya. Parasarya says, close your eyes, close your ears. That is the way how to get rid of suffering. They always direct their suffering to the outside world. But here we can see very clearly the difference between dukkha and dukkha satya, samudaya and samudaya satya. Nigantanathaputta tried to give up everything that he had. His properties, relatives, even clothes. He gave up all the samudayas. But he couldn't overcome samudaya satya. Samudaya satya is here.
Because he thought it's come from out there.
Yes, that is why they tried to give up everything. You know, in Niganta religion, they always try to give up the material things. Overcoming material things, they are searching liberation. But still they have attachment to their five aggregates, Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana. This is the difference what the Buddha explained. That is why we need these references. When we see, the more we understand these references, the more we are confident in what the Buddha taught. It helps us to go forward on this path. And also we can see the qualities of the Dhamma. Akalika, immediately effective. As soon as we see this reality, our energy increases to practice this path. Even though we have no another person to help us, when we receive a refuge throughout listening to Dhamma within us, then we meet the path. That is why Buddha says, Atta Depa Bhikkhave Viratata Sarana. Firstly, we need the Kalyana Mitta. We need the external Dhamma, but when we take it as ours, then we have made a refuge within us. Then we can go in our own way according to Dhamma. That is why Buddhism says, Dhamma Depa Bhikkhave Viharadam Sarana. Dwell with the Dhamma as an island, as a refuge, with no other refuge. By listening to Dhamma, we make a refuge within us. Then we don't depend on any person or anything outside world. For that, we have to listen to this message again and again. If you think that it is enough that for you to practice Dhamma, you can use Dhammacakka Sutta. Don't worry about this one. If you think it is enough that you are understanding that you have read in Dhammacakka Sutta, the Four Noble Truths, you can follow it, no problem. But if you need more information, we have to go to these references. Then we are so inspired with this Dhamma. And also, we can help many people. It doesn't mean that every person should know these things, but especially as the speakers, as monks and nuns, we should know this foundation. All the lay people don't need to listen to Abhidhamma. But especially as speakers, we should have this foundation when we preach Dhamma to the world. We don't need to say that this is Abhidhamma or this is Abhidhamma Sanghara. We don't need to say, but in our unconsciousness, we should have this understanding. Then we can explain the Dhamma very clearly, without doubt, without depending on others. And also, we can explain any question. We have no doubt. Everywhere we are qualified to deliver this message with confidence. This understanding is for our own experience, our own understanding. If someone thinks that it is wrong or it is not useful for me, it is enough that Sutta Pitaka for me, it is okay. Don't worry about this one. We firstly explain the normal suffering that Buddha explained according to Dhammacakka Sutta. It is very clear. The noble truth of suffering is Jati, Jara, Marana, those things. And Samudaya Satya is Yayan Tanha, Pono, Pavika, Nandi, Raga, Sagata, Tatra tatra abhinandini seyatidam kama tanha bhava tanha vibhava tanha. That is the cause of suffering. And Nirodha Satya, Yotasaya, Asya Viraga Nirodha, that is cessation. And Magga Satya, it is very clear. Samadhi, Samasankappa, I know 8 things very well. But if someone needs to go to the deeper level with clear understanding, actually this information is very, very important. And also, we should be wise to clear everything what the Buddha had explained. Especially, the Four Noble Truth is the main center. That is the heart of Buddhism. We should have clear understanding about the Four Noble Truths without doubts. Even though now we can practice the Dhamma completely, we should have clear understanding about the Four Noble Truths. If we cleanse the knowledge of Four Noble Truths, it means we understand the 5 aggregates. Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana. Form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. These 5 things we can see in some levels, such as Vijnana. Vijnana we can see in Vipaka level. There it says, Pamassaramidam bhikkhave vijnanam chittam. Mind or consciousness is very pure. That is in the Vipaka level, result level. And also again, Mayupamancha vijnanam. Consciousness is like a mirage. Why is that? That is not the first experience. That is the second experience that we received with our ignorance. That is now karma, ajnana charya, the behavior of ignorance. And also again Buddha says, chittang panyancha bhavyam. What is that? Their vijnana or mind should be developed. What is that? That belongs to the path, the Noble Eightfold Path. When we practice wisdom or reflecting on impermanence, wherever we practice thoughts, mental objects, mental formations, it means consciousness also there. When Visakha Upasaka asks some questions near Dhammacakka, he asks that whether consciousness and panya can be divided. Then Dhammacakka says very clearly, panya and consciousness cannot be divided. Wherever panya or wisdom, there it is consciousness too. And also we can say sankhara paccaya vijnanam. They are also consciousness. That consciousness and the consciousness is panya are different. That is why when we see these differences, everything are cleaned, purified. If we don't have this understanding, sometimes some persons ask, Bhante, what is sankhara? What is sanya? We give one definition. Sanya is this one. What is sanya? What is the example of sanya? Marichupama sanya. Marich is mirage. Yes. Then we explain Marichupama sanya. Then again that person asks, Bhante, in Girimananda Sutta, Buddha says, Dasa sanya, 10 perceptions. What is that? If it is a mirage, should we develop it? What is our answer? We have no answer. If we know this pattern, sanya can be seen in the vipaka level, in the avidya level, navakarma level, in the path with wisdom, and also it can be seen in the arhantas level. It is very important. Wherever it says that should be overcome, it means that sanya belongs to samudaya satya. Wherever Buddha says vijnana or sanya developed, where is it? It belongs to magga satya. Wherever it says that it should be understood, vijnana, sanya, sankhara, sometimes it says that we should understand it. Where is it? It is in the vipaka level. In the Vipaka level, aggregates should be understood. In the Samudaya level, aggregates should be overcome. In the Nirodha level, Nirodha Satya level, aggregates should be realized, experienced. And the Magga Satya level, aggregates should be developed. Magga Satyam Bhavetabam. These things should be understood very clearly. When we go to understand these things, this knowledge is very, very important. If we don't have this understanding, everywhere we are confused. Especially as monks, we should have this understanding. Without this understanding in the present society, we are unable to face. The reason is that they have learned a lot of things. They refer Abhidhamma Pitaka. Abhidhamma Pitaka, don't misunderstand. Usually when we listening to Abhidhamma, we think that Abhidhammata Sangaha. Actually, that is the later summary book. When we study Abhidhamma Pitaka, it is Abhidhamma Pitaka, Dhammasangani, Vibhanga, Dhatukatha, Yamaka Patthana, these are the Abhidhamma Pitaka. Especially as Buddhist followers, we should refer even Dhammasangani and Vibhanga Pakaran. That is very, very important. You know, we can see in Sutta Pitaka Rupa form. Chattarocha Mahabhuta Upadaya Rupancha. How do we explain Upadaya Rupa? When someone asks you, Bhante, according to Sutta Pitaka, please explain me Upadaya Rupa. You can explain? Actually, no information about Upadaya Rupa in Sutta Pitaka. We have to go to Abhidhamma Pitaka Dhammasangani to understand Upadaya Rupa. What is the nature of the Upadaya Rupa? Until we understand the Rupa, we are unable to understand the Dhamma. That is why we need some references. If we are very gifted persons, we don't need to learn Abhidhamma Pitaka. It is enough Sutta Pitaka. There are 28 rupas. Among the 28 rupas, we can see only one rupa. Only rupa. We can see Sabda Rupa, Gandha Rupa, Rasa Rupa, Pottabha Rupa. We can't see them. We can see only one Rupa, which is Rupa. Only color. With this knowledge, we find the path, the Noble Eightfold path. We have encouragement to go forward on the path. Actually, we are so happy having this path, the Noble Eightfold path. We do everything living with the Noble Eightfold path. We don't move away just a second from the Noble Eightfold path as the result of our understanding. If we have this understanding, we always practice the Noble Eightfold path. At least 1 second, we can go away from the Noble Eightfold path. It means we know very well this is the fearless path. Ujuko nam somaggo abhehanam sadisa. This is the direct path. This is the fearless path, which is the Noble Eightfold path. We manage all our day-to-day activities according to the Noble Eightfold path. Samma Ditti, Samma Sankappa, right understanding, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. This is the path. And what is the results? Samma Jnana, Samma Vimukti, right knowledge and right liberation. That is the results that the Arhantas have. The Seka person has 8 factors. The Arhantas has another 2 things. They have 10 factors. Attanga Samannagato Seko, Dasanga Samannagata. Seka person has 8 factors. Arhantas have 10 factors with Samma Jnana and Samma Vimukti, right knowledge and right understanding. Okay, with this understanding, let's try to practice this path and to liberate from suffering as much as possible. Okay, for that, I wish you all the best. By the power of this spiritual energy, may all of us attain the final bliss of liberation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Dukkam pantaca nirdukkha, bhayam pantaca nirbhaya, sokam pantaca nissoka, Vantu sambe pipanino. All the blessings be with you. Thank you so much, Bhante.